The story of the mind behind Linux begins not with grand ambition or a desire to change the world, but with curiosity, practicality, and a very human dislike for limitations. Linus Torvalds is often portrayed as a legendary figure in technology, yet his journey is deeply grounded in simplicity and honesty. When people hear his name today, they associate it with Linux, Git, open source, and the infrastructure of the modern digital world. But at the core of his thinking, as revealed through talks, interviews, and moments like his famous TED appearance, is a mindset that values functionality over hype, engineering over ego, and collaboration over control. Linus Torvalds grew up in Finland, surrounded by books, logic, and a culture that encouraged independent thinking. His early exposure to computers was not driven by flashy interfaces or commercial software, but by understanding how things worked underneath. This curiosity became the foundation of his mindset. When Linus talks about programming, he rarely frames it as art or magic. He sees it as problem solving. Something is broken or inefficient, so you fix it. This practical approach explains much of what came later. Linux was never meant to be a revolution. It was meant to be useful. In his TED-style thinking, Linus often emphasizes that Linux was created because he wanted a better operating system for himself. At the time, commercial Unix systems were expensive, restricted, and closed. The alternatives available to students and hobbyists were limited. Linus had a new computer, an interest in operating systems, and the desire to explore how software interacted with hardware. He began writing a kernel initially as a personal learning exercise. This detail is important because it shows how innovation often starts, not with business plans or market analysis, but with someone scratching their own itch. What makes Linus Torvalds unique is not just that he created Linux, but how he let it grow. When he shared his early code online, he did not try to control it tightly. Instead, he invited feedback, criticism, and contributions. This openness became the defining characteristic of Linux. In his mindset, good ideas matter more than hierarchy. If someone submits better code, it gets used. Authority in Linux is earned through competence, not titles. This approach challenged traditional software development models and proved that large-scale collaboration without centralized control could work. During talks like his TED appearance, Linus often downplays his own role. He insists that Linux is successful because thousands of developers contribute to it. While this humility is genuine, it also reflects his understanding of systems. No complex system thrives through a single point of control. Linux works because it distributes responsibility. Linus acts as a coordinator and decision maker, but not a dictator. His famous blunt communication style sometimes gets attention, yet it is rooted in clarity. He dislikes vague thinking, unnecessary complexity, and emotional arguments and technical discussions. The mind behind Linux is deeply focused on efficiency. Linus frequently talks about how computers should serve users, not the other way around. He criticizes software bloat, unnecessary abstraction, and designs that prioritize appearance over performance. This philosophy is visible in Linux itself. The kernel is optimized, modular, and constantly refined. Changes are not accepted because they are trendy, but because they solve real problems. This mindset has allowed Linux to scale from personal computers to the largest supercomputers on Earth. One of the most fascinating insights from Linus Torvalds' way of thinking is his attitude toward failure. He does not romanticize mistakes, but he also does not fear them. In software development, bugs are inevitable. What matters is how quickly they are found and fixed. Open source accelerates this process. When thousands of eyes examine code, problems surface faster. This is not an ideological stance for Linus, but a practical one. Open source works because it aligns with how complex systems evolve. In discussions similar to TED Talks, Linus often explains that motivation matters more than money. Most contributors to Linux are not driven purely by financial incentives. They contribute because they enjoy solving problems, learning, and being part of something meaningful. This challenges the assumption that people only work hard when controlled or rewarded by authority. Linux proves that intrinsic motivation can produce results at a global scale. The mind behind Linux understands human nature well enough to trust it. Another key aspect of Linus Torvalds' thinking is his skepticism toward over. He believes that real progress happens through iteration. You build something simple, test it, improve it, and repeat. This evolutionary approach contrasts with top-down designs where everything is planned in advance. Linux evolved feature by feature, hardware by hardware, need by need. This mirrors biological evolution more than traditional engineering. The result is a system that adapts well to change. When Linus talks about technology, he avoids buzzwords. He rarely speaks about artificial intelligence, blockchain, or trends unless they intersect with real engineering challenges. His focus remains on fundamentals. How fast is it? Is it stable? Does it work? This grounded perspective is refreshing in a tech culture often dominated by hype. The mind behind Linux values substance over storytelling, even though his own story has become legendary. The TED-style narrative around Linus Torvalds often highlights how Linux powers the modern world. Android runs on Linux. Most servers run Linux. Cloud infrastructure depends on Linux. Yet Linus himself seems almost indifferent to fame. He measures success not by adoption numbers, but by whether the system continues to improve. For him, Linux is never finished. There is always another bug to fix, another performance improvement to make, another piece of hardware to support. Linus Torvalds also created Git, another foundational tool in modern software development. Git reflects the same mindset as Linux. It was built to solve a specific problem efficiently. Existing version control systems did not meet Linus's requirements for speed and reliability, so he built his own. Once again, the solution was shared openly, and once again, it became a global standard. This pattern reveals something important about his mind. He does not chase influence. Influence follows his solutions. Critics sometimes point to Linus's blunt communication style as a flaw. He has acknowledged this and worked to improve how he interacts with others. Yet even this aspect reflects his underlying values. He prioritizes clarity and correctness. In technical discussions, ambiguity can cause serious problems. While tone matters, Linus believes that honest feedback is essential for quality. Over time, the Linux community has matured, developing codes of conduct and better communication practices while preserving technical rigor. From a TED-like philosophical angle, Linus Torvalds represents a different model of leadership. He does not inspire through speeches or charisma. He inspires through people follow him because he understands the system deeply and makes good decisions. This type of leadership is rare but powerful. It suggests that expertise and trust can be stronger motivators than authority and branding. The mind behind Linux also challenges how we think about ownership. Linux is not owned in the traditional sense. No single entity controls it. This has protected it from many risks that affect proprietary systems. Companies come and go, but Linux remains. Its independence ensures continuity. Linus has often emphasized that this was not a political statement, but a practical one. Shared ownership creates resilience. Another important insight from Linus Torvalds' worldview is his belief in boring technology. He has famously said that good technology should be boring. When something works reliably, it fades into the background. Linux is not flashy, but it is dependable. This is why it is trusted with critical systems. The mind behind Linux understands that excitement is temporary, but stability is lasting. In educational contexts, Linus's story serves as inspiration for learners. He did not start as a genius with unlimited resources. He started as a student experimenting on his own computer. His success shows the power of curiosity, persistence, and sharing knowledge. The Linux ecosystem welcomes beginners, just as Linus once was. This openness ensures that new generations continue to learn, contribute, and innovate. As technology continues to evolve, the relevance of Linus Torvalds' mindset becomes even clearer. In an era of closed platforms, data control, and centralized power, Linux stands as an alternative model, not because it is perfect, but because it is adaptable. The principles that guided its creation remain valid. Build things that work, share improvements, trust competence, fix problems openly. The TED-style framing of Linus Torvalds often presents him as an accidental revolutionary. That description fits. He did not set out to change the world, but by focusing on solving real problems, honestly, he did. This is perhaps the most powerful lesson from the mind behind Linux. World-changing ideas do not always begin with ambition. Sometimes they begin with dissatisfaction, curiosity, and the courage to try something better. Ultimately, the story of Linus Torvalds is not just about Linux. It is about how systems, communities, and ideas grow. It is about respecting intelligence, valuing collaboration, and staying grounded in reality. Linux continues to evolve, and so does its creator. Yet the core philosophy remains unchanged. Technology should empower people, Good ideas should be shared, and progress happens when we focus less on control and more on making things work. This is why the mind behind Linux matters, not just because of what it created, but because of how it thinks. In a world filled with noise, Linus Torvalds reminds us that clarity, simplicity, and honesty can quietly reshape everything.